Good afternoon, everyone. It is my pleasure to welcome my colleague and friend, Abby Spencer, to speak to us for Medicine Grand Rounds today. Dr. Abby Spencer serves as professor and vice chair for education in the Department of Medicine and as the director of the Academy of Educators at Washington University School of Medicine in St. Louis. She previously served I think up until fairly recently, as professor of medicine at the Cleveland Clinic, Lerner College of Medicine of Case Western Reserve University, where she was the director of the internal medicine residency program there for many years, as well as vice chair for education for the Medicine Institute at the Cleveland Clinic. Dr. Spencer graduated summa cum laude and Phi Beta Kappa with a bachelor's degree in behavioral neuroscience from Tulane University and received her medical degree from the University of Pittsburgh School of Medicine. She trained in New York City, completing her primary care internal medicine residency at New York Presbyterian Hospital, Weill Cornell Medical Center, and then completed a GIM fellowship with a concentration in women's health, earning her master's degree in medical education from the University of Pittsburgh as well. She has dedicated her career to innovating, developing curriculum, building teams, developing others in medical education, and has delivered over 150 invited faculty development educational courses and workshops, both locally and nationally. Hold on, my computer froze here. Hold on. Abby has won numerous awards for her teaching, including and her educational scholarship, mentorship, and leadership, including some very prestigious awards, such as the 2016 Society of General Internal Medicine and Association of Chiefs and Leaders in GIM National Bracati Leadership and Mentorship Award, the 2017 Society of General Internal Medicine National Scholarship and Education Award, and the 2020 ACGME Parker J. Palmer Courage to Teach Award. As well, she won the Cleveland Clinic Women's Professional Staff and Women's Champion Award in 2020, an award which recognizes the contribution to the advancement, development, and well-being of women. She completed an ELAM fellowship in 2022, and she serves on the editorial board for the Journal of General Internal Medicine. She's had many leadership positions in many national organizations, most recently on the council of the Association of Program Directors in Internal Medicine, and she now serves on the ACGME's Internal Medicine Review Committee. So it's a pleasure to welcome Dr. Spencer to speak with us about stepping into the Twitterverse to amplify your message. Dr. Spencer, welcome.
Thank you so much for the very warm welcome, and I hope all of you know the award-winning Dr. Steinberg as well, who we got to personally spend some time together at a retreat for both being recipients of the Parker Palmer Courage to Teach. So it's always exciting to reconnect with folks in those community, and you obviously have quite a few treasures of your own at Mount Sinai, including Dr. Steinberg. So thank you again for the warm welcome, and excited to be here to talk about amplifying your message in the Twitterverse, and also some ways to make sure that you don't get into any trouble out there in the Twitterverse. And then also just want to congratulate and wish all the best to any of the med students who are out there. I know this is a very big day, and so I hope only good news comes for you today. So what I hope that we will accomplish during our time together this morning or this afternoon is one that will describe the benefits of engaging in Med Twitter, that will talk about some of the ways that you can amplify your training programs or your department, and then again, and importantly, outline some steps to stay out of trouble in the Twitterverse as well. So, when I first heard of Twitter, learned about Twitter, I really thought of it as somewhere where like the superstars were, where, JT and Britney Spears tweeted their every move and action. And when people asked me if I tweet or I was on Twitter, I sort of giggled at, why would they even ask me that? And that I wasn't sure why anyone would want to know sort of the up-to-date, short character blurbs of what someone is thinking or doing at any one time, let alone, a commoner like me. So I was really confused and sort of skeptical of Twitter and the Twitterverse. And it took me actually several years before I even considered again what it might have for someone like me or in the medical field, that, maybe it isn't just a place for the superstars. Enter Dr. Glaucoma Flecken, who some of you may know or follow, who really brought Med Twitter to life in so many different ways with his funny videos and, comedic takes of a lot of the issues in medicine and taking on, insurance companies or impersonating different fields. And It's hard to say which of his impersonations are best, but one right after the other, they keep me laughing. And most recently, he actually was plugging to put more money in the pockets of internists and, particularly our ID specialists. So, this was something that kind of caught my attention early on. And then there was sort of the FOMO, right, of going to conferences and people who were already in the community that I was a part of, who were staying connected with each other and with articles in medical education, with innovation sort of through Twitter. And it was probably the strong case of FOMO that caused me to sort of check it out and see what was going on. And that's when I started to really learn about the community that is Twitter. And what an amazing way it is to connect with certainly those who you know already that maybe you only run into at your conferences annually, but also to actually build and maintain a community of folks you may not know, but who are in the medical education field or in medicine or in whatever realms that are important to you or that you want to advocate for. And interestingly, when I first moved to WashU almost 2 years ago now, I think there were 5 different folks who actually came up and said, "Oh, hey, I know you from Twitter. We've discussed this on Twitter." And that it really is a way to bring people together that you may have actually never met IRL or in real life. And then you find yourself working at the same institution as them. And they already sort of know who you are based on what you tweet about or what are the issues that you choose to take on or to amplify. Additionally, in real life, Tweetups at conferences. So this, I believe, we've applied for the world record of the greatest tweets. No one has told us that it's not yet. So we're going to stand by that this was the largest Tweetup ever. And this was at, I believe it was AIM, the Alliance for Academic Internal Medicine, at a workshop that Rebecca up front was giving and Avi on Twitter and how to get engaged, and had the selfie stick there, which I put in the hands of Dr. Rebecca Jaffe here. And it was just sort of a moment in time that we were able to capture. And it's funny, as I was looking back at this and trying to find this photo today, there's actually 3 people who I work with now who I didn't know then. So this picture was years before WashU was even a twinkle in my eye. And yet this sort of brought us together. And it's really fun now to look back through this picture from years ago and see how many people who I now know. And so these in real life Tweetups at conferences and these great selfies that you can get, I recommend getting yourself a selfie stick. My sister recommended this morning, make sure you talk about the selfie stick. It does help you sort of launch yourself into the Twitterverse. But again, it's a way to really help build community and belonging. And whether you choose to dive into, women in medicine or primary care chat or Harvard Macy or any of the med ed communities, you're going to find the community that sort of fits for you. And I think that's probably one of the largest reasons that brings people into Twitter, is to find that community. And then within that community, in addition to being able to grow it and belonging it, there's sort of 6 key buckets that I want to talk about with you today on aspects that within the Med Twitter community you can really take on. And so the first bucket is to talk about promotion. And so promoting, sponsoring, amplifying your own work and the work of others, those that you train, those that you mentor. I can't tell you the number of professor letters of recommendations that I've written for different educators around the country who are at arm's reach, who I've never been their mentor or their mentee. I've never been their trainer, and they need someone that can talk about their impact on medical education. And so through Twitter, I've been able to find people that are looking for someone that says, "Hey, can someone look at my body of work, and would you be willing to write this letter for me?" And so it really has been a way to help people to not only promote certain folks, but actually to help get them promoted in their own institutions. It's also a fabulous way to amplify the success of your trainees, of those who are underrepresented in medicine, your colleagues. Again, you can promote women in medicine, junior faculty, upcoming trainings or things going on in your programs, especially around recruitment time. It's an amazing time to promote, hey, look at our happy program. Look at all the great educational things we're doing. Look at all the fun that we're having. It's also a way to really help other voices be heard. Twitter is known for really flattening the hierarchy and giving everybody an equal voice. And so people who in person or at your own institutions, you might not rub elbows with or be in the same room with to be able to communicate with, through Twitter, there is no hierarchy. Everyone gets the same number of characters, the same amount of airtime. And so you can communicate and connect with those that you might not otherwise have a chance to dialogue with. And also, again, a chance to help other voices get heard. And so someone that puts a thought or a voice out into Twitter, you might say, you know what, that's actually a really good thought, and I'm going to amplify that, and I'm going to retweet it, and I'm going to add my voice to that as well to help lift this person up and help them develop their own followership, so that they can have impact too in areas that are important to them. And this is something that you can really do proactively to decide, you know, who are the voices that we want to amplify, and who do you specifically decide to follow to learn more about different perspectives or areas. And so again, choosing to follow more minoritized or those underrepresented in medicine, or choosing to follow trainees or folks who again may feel like otherwise they can feel disenfranchised or like they don't have a voice. And then, you know, there's a lot of actual specialties that have kind of taken over Twitter to say, hey, look at me, and you know, help me find my way out there. So for example, last year, there was a whole melanin and derm match sort of campaign where all of the URIM folks who matched in dermatology, it was a huge, you know, trending and celebrating and amplifying, and it was hard not to get caught up in this melanin and derm and want to feel the excitement and also tweet and retweet and celebrate this group of new dermatologists. It's a way to show people that they matter, that their voices matter, and again, give some love and validation to others. You can amplify and their scholarship, posters, presentations, publications. You can even tweet to fellowship directors, you know, as senior residents or chief residents or faculty, and say, hey, check out this superstar future gastroenterologist, you know, coming to a GI program near you, or to hiring program directors or hiring faculty. And so it's really a great way to promote your people, to put them out there, to amplify, to connect them with others. So the next box that I would go to is the mentorship bucket. And there's so much advice, from career advice to phone calls that then come out of Twitter relationships, to job transitions, to managing situations or responses to bias. Again, the fact that Twitter can sort of flatten those hierarchies gives you access to mentors and to conversations with people that you might just not have otherwise. They might not be in your circle or your network. And Twitter lets you reach out and say, hey, would you mind having a conversation with me? I have a couple questions for you. And so I can tell you, I found some incredible mentors that actually started on Twitter years before I ever met them in real life. So for example, Sue Hingle or Tom Cooney, or even those who are actually mentors on how to engage with Twitter, who would teach me some of the intricacies of how to do it and how to connect and how to make sure that what I was putting out there was seen. And then with a few of the mentees that we found and mentors, we actually were able to get scholarship out of that. And as a group of mentors and mentees that found each other on Twitter, we would then wrote an article together, i.e. scholarship, on what it was like to have a mentorship over Twitter. So moving to the scholarship bucket. There are tutorials that people do. You've probably seen them, and that's something that you can put on your CV as digital scholarship. It's a great way to bring attention to new articles and data. And I actually find a lot of the articles and the journal articles that I read, I find on Twitter, and then I go to the source and I read the actual article, but I might not even know that it existed if someone hadn't say, hey, take a look at this. This is really interesting. And so I find a lot of the scholarship and the evidence-based medicine that I read from Twitter. Journal articles now actually have discussions around the articles, and you can meet the authors and have conversations with the authors about whether it's practice changing medicine or initiatives in medical education or whatever it is. You can actually interact with the authors and with the journals right in that moment. And then Twitter itself can be scholarship, again, whether you're putting out tutorials or you're doing surveys, asking different physicians or trainees about a certain experience. A couple of residents at WashU with senior mentorship from both Jesse Gold, who's at WashU, and Dr. Vinny Arora from University of Chicago. They just published an article last week in JGym that they did purely through Twitter about the impact of the post-Dobbs decision on training and where trainees are willing to train, what states will they go to, that again was conducted entirely through Twitter and then published in a mainstream journal. And then again, mentoring relationship itself can be published. And so I gave you that example as well. So there's a lot of scholarship that can come from being on Twitter and engaging in the Twitterverse. What else do I want to tell you? And then there's the learning that can take place. And so there's a lot of pearls that you can put out there, and you can both teach and learn in a lot of different ways that I think are very important. So I wanted to put up this from JGME from a few years ago about key points of social media in scholarship, because I thought this they made some great points here. So social media is a new space for academic medicine that has enormous possibilities for research, education, clinical care, and dissemination of healthcare science. Institutions are starting to recognize social media scholarship as significant and meritorious, and to include it when an academic is being considered for promotion and tenures. Academics are encouraged to create and maintain social media portfolios to document the impact and quality of their digital scholarship. And institutions are recommended to develop clear impact grids and appraisal methods. And so again, it's getting more and more mainstream to actually have things out there in the Twitterverse that then become a meaningful part of your CV and your portfolio towards promotion, and how do we count that in academic promotion and show that it's impact by developing these different grids and appraisal methods. So going back to our buckets, many go to Twitter as well for inspiration. So I follow a lot of my favorite authors on Twitter. So Brene Brown and Kim Scott, Simon Sinek, the Harvard Business Review articles, Susan David, Glennon Doyle, Abby Wambach, whoever your authors are, most of them are on there, and they're not just promoting their books, which is also a great way to know when the new book comes out, but also just sharing their thoughts and their perspectives on things, and can give you a little bit of inspiration. Again, I don't know how many of you follow Dr. Sue Hingle, but she's always putting out inspirational quotes and one-liners that I love that just make me smile. Sometimes people are just putting up a tweet of their puppy or a sunset or a moment in time they had with a patient or with a learner that was meaningful to them. And so you can go on there to inspire others, but you can also just sort of find a moment of inspiration and connection in the Twitterverse as well. I find a lot of my favorite leadership quotes about courage, or things that make me smile on there as well. And then there's influence. And so, we talk about influencers, and I've heard or learned recently that people can do that as a job. They're influencers. But even if your job is actually being a physician or being in medical education, there really are ways to influence and to advocate, again, in a form of sponsorship of the topics and the areas that are important to you. And so there's a lot of social justice advocates in the Twitterverse, and you can really have an impact by telling stories. If any of you follow Grady Doc, she has tremendous influence through her storytelling. The Black Lives Matter campaigner, This Is Our Lane, and physicians getting involved in different political areas and advocacy that are important to the work that we do. It's a way to advocate, again, for our trainees, to advocate for change, for justice for our learners, to put out truth around vaccinations and the data that we know up there. And it's a way to also influence the gaslighting and the bullying, and to be able to call out, stop the harassment and stop the bigotry and stop the gaslighting and the bullying. All of these are ways that we can influence through the Twitterverse. All of the, hashtag stop the manals or stop the mansplaining, and giving languages to things that many women in medicine were experiencing, but maybe didn't have the words for. And again, social media, by flattening that hierarchy, it gives you a voice, and it gives you connectors. There's also great he for she's out there. And so for the men who are wonderful at promoting women and promoting those with other lived experiences, to thank them, and it even has its own hashtag. And so there's a lot of ways to influence as well. And then just to be an ally, again, to help other voices be heard. And then last bucket, entertainment. And there's one thing before we get to entertainment, sorry, that I wanted to say on here. I think this is in relation to scholarship. So academic tweeting and OB-GYN, they put out an interesting article sort of saying that they weren't quite on Twitter as much as they wished and as much as they saw the internists doing. And so their article was actually, they looked at the 6 highest impact factor journals in OB-GYN, And they found that only a small percentage of their editorial members, compared to all other journals, were actually on Twitter. And they concluded that editorial board members of the 6 highest impact factor journals in OB/GYN are not capitalizing on the dynamic nature of Twitter and its instant convenient access from our smartphones to further their academia when compared to specialties in medicine. And I thought this was really interesting because we basically gave an entire field of medicine FOMO such that it created scholarship, which was, of course, spread around on Twitter, but in an actual journal saying, we think that the fact that our journal, that our editors aren't on there on Twitter talking with the authors and with our readership, it's a big deal and we need to change that. I thought that was fascinating and, potentially practice changing, and also a great shout out to all of the fields that actually do have their journal editors on Twitter and interacting with their readership, with the authors, and with the articles themselves. So going back to entertainment, for those of you who remember the predicament here of this very serious lawyer whose child had put on the cat filter and is here in this very serious voice saying, "I am not a cat." And for those of you who saw, it was pretty hysterical. It went viral on Twitter. But there's other entertainment on there as well. I follow a lot of my Broadway stars. There's funny stories of kids. You might have seen it was just the anniversary of a political figure on the news whose little kid kind of rolled in on one of those walkers that the older siblings sort of pushed them in right on camera, and the sort of giggling of that was soon what the what the coronavirus world was going to be like once we all went virtual. And so people, again, they share their learning, their mistakes, their beautiful music, Hamilton quotes and poetry. There really is a lot out there in entertainment on Twitter as well. So we'll move on and give some sort of further details from there, but I wanted to really share the kind of 6 buckets that I really think about as you think about what it means to engage in the community of Twitter. So those who took to poetry to say why they feel social media has an impact. So here's someone that put a mnemonic up for why she's a social media doc and why on Twitter. And she said it's the right place to be. So P for promote ideas, myself, others, to learn inside and outside of my field, to advocate for areas like child health or equity or whatever's important to you, to connect with my tweets, and to educate, both busting up myths and also science communication. Another, if you prefer a haiku that someone put up there of why do they go into the Twitterverse, to learn, amplify, teach, find partners eager to chat, Med Twitter connects. And so again, whether it's poetry or logic or whatever it is that calls to you, there's a lot out there of why social media can benefit medical professionals. And then one of the most important things, I think, especially if you are an educator and you're used to really meeting people where they are, is that this is where people are now. They're on Twitter. And so we want to meet them where they are, not where we'd like them to be. And so if you're thinking about how to connect with your learners or future trainees or applicants to your programs, if they're on Twitter and they're looking at programs and there's programs that are notably absent, that silence sends a message which can be as loud as those that do have a presence that are showing, hey, look what we're doing in our training program. Look at our innovation. Look what we're doing to celebrate wellness. Look how we're teaching clinical reasoning or simulation or point of care ultrasound. And so again, when you think about not where you are, but where the people that you're actually going to be recruiting or training or taking care of, if they're in Twitter, then it may behoove you to be there as well and to meet them there. So from there, an important thing to think about then is, well, who else will you see in the Twitterverse? Because while you may be just looking to follow those who are in areas of importance to you, anyone out there can choose to follow you unless you block them. So first person who will see you in the Twitterverse, your boss. And so again, as you start to think about what you're saying, if you have an opinion, if you wouldn't want that your boss or your future boss or employer to know that opinion or to know what it is you're about to say, Twitter might not be the place for it. And so always be thinking about who else is out there, not just who you follow, but anyone who could follow you. Your future trainees are out there. So again, what's the message that you're sending for the culture of your program, the tone, what you choose to celebrate and put on there? Are you only celebrating achievements, like when your trainees publish something, or do you also publish when they start a family or when they made a challenging diagnosis? And so what are the things that you choose to amplify that you want your future trainees to see and say, those are the things that are important to that program? Your future friends and colleagues are in the Twitterverse. So again, you have so many colleagues and friends just waiting to meet you, that you will then meet up in real life at different tweet-ups at conferences. And so again, a wonderful way to connect. You again can connect with your favorite authors. You can find mentees, mentors, potential applicants. A lot of our political leaders, for better or worse, are out in the Twitterverse. And so you can see what they're thinking about and you can comment. Journal editors are there. So if you have questions about a journal or you have comments on one, it's a great way to interact there. The program planning committee members of national conferences that you might attend could be on there. And so if you tweet about a noon conference that you gave to the residents or a great workshop that you did with your chief residents, someone might see that and say, hey, you know what, we're going to invite you to come do this at our national meeting. So again, it's a great way to get yourself out there, your ideas out there, and scholarship begets more scholarship, and you start to get invited to do different talks. I imagine that I was invited to give this talk by someone I don't know who probably saw something I put on Twitter and said, hey, come talk to us about Twitter. And so there's people out there who are just waiting to invite you to come and do things based on what you're putting out there. Your academic crush might be out there in Twitterverse. Again, someone you might never have the guts to go up to at a meeting and introduce yourself to, but you could comment on their work or retweet it or even send them a message. Your peers are there, your past trainees and mentors and teachers. And so again, as I, now years out from being associate program director and then program director, where my former trainees have now moved on, to their fellowships, to their jobs, and are now, even in leadership positions themselves, to be able to follow and what they're doing and still celebrate them is incredible. And yes, you're still going to see Britney Spears and JT and some of your favorite sports folks out there in the Twitterverse, but there's so many more of us out there too. And then one of the areas that I really want to make sure that everyone remembers is in the Twitterverse as well are our patients. And so you want to be very cautious about tweeting, oh, I just took care of someone today that had blah, 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 or even being disparaging around the aspects of medicine that might be challenging for us, knowing that any of our patients or our colleagues' patients or our future patients could be reading what we write as well. And so the same way you want to make sure that you're tweeting so that your boss or future boss could see it, you want to be very cognizant of what's in your pictures and what's in your words, because our patients can see it as well if they're on Twitter. So I like this article that Avio Glasser and Seema and Tom Cooney put out about 12 tips for tweeting as a residency program. And maybe as we go, you can be thinking about as you are pondering who keeps your social media at Mount Sinai Beth Israel, of what do you think and how are you doing along these 12 tips. So first, tweet early, tweet often. And so you don't want to just kind of put one tweet out there and then ghost for a while, because if you have people that start to follow you, they want to know what you have to say. They want to see your content. And so you need to keep up with it, and you need to have enough content on there that keeps people interesting and keeps them coming back. Another tip to get people to look at your tweets and not just sort of scroll right past them is use pictures. Almost all studies on this have shown when there's pictures, when there's links, readers are going to sort of slow down and take a look. You want to do those hashtags so that people who follow certain areas, whether it's MedEd or Women in Medicine or POCUS or hashtag clinical reasoning or whatever it is, that you're bringing the people who are interested in those areas into your tweets. You want to celebrate and engage your residents. And so here's a great example of that, of excitement, of welcoming our new chiefs. And again, you want to highlight people, you want to do your hashtags, you want to link to them, and celebrate different things that come up. What are we proud of? What are our residents doing? What are the studies that they're putting out there? If you have events, tip number 4, hey, it's our 10th annual research event that we always have at Mount Sinai Beth Israel. Stay tuned for next year's. And then engage your faculty and fellows. So again, if you can link to them, if you can tag them if they're there, if not, hashtag them so you create enough FOMO that they join also. But again, celebrate your people and what they're doing and bring them into not just your residency community, but making sure you're connecting your faculty and your fellows and your other divisions and departments at your institutions as well. And that's where tip 6 comes in, about defining community in multiple ways on Twitter. So there's sort of the larger community that you may follow, the Med Twitter community, but you also might think about what's the Mount Sinai Beth Israel community. You know, what other divisions can we link into what we're doing? What other departments? How can we also say and tweet what our colleagues in the surgery residency are doing? And then they'll be excited to tweet about us as well, our fellowship programs, our medical students, et cetera. So all of these are ways to keep enlarging what that community looks like that you're in and that your program's in. And then identifying themes. So if you're tweeting as a residency program, what are the themes that you want to advocate for? Is it trainee wellness? Is it vaccinations? Is it this is our lane? Is it safety in certain areas? Is it better working conditions? And so whatever it is, really decide what your program's about, what are the themes that you want to take on, and then fiercely advocate for those. Tip number 8, keep your eyes open and tweet the moments. And so, you know, if you just made a great diagnosis with a trainee, if you just saw a beautiful sunset, if you just had an aha moment about either a mistake that you made or something a faculty member says to a trainee, or maybe a trainee gives feedback to a faculty and you're like, that's actually really wise. I think I want to share that. You know, those moments of ahas or reflection can be fantastic tweets that end up going viral, or again, could get you invited to give a talk just because you shared that moment of learning or that moment of vulnerability. And then utilize Twitter analytics. And so if you see, you know what, when people are looking at our tweets, we tend to get more likes or more retweets when we tweet about how our residents get into fellowship, or what's the scholarship they're doing, or what are the awards that they're getting. Use those to create more tweets in those areas, where if you're showing just pictures, but you're not saying anything and people aren't liking them or interacting, then use those Twitter analytics to say, okay, we need to be more thoughtful in what we're saying. What's the point of this? What's the message that I want to be sending to them? And so utilizing Twitter analytics can help you be more deliberate. And so you're not just putting things out there into the void, but you're actually having the impact that you want to make. You're either you're having more students look at your residency program because they're interested in the things that you're putting out. And so it's helping you with recruitment, et cetera. Be professional, obviously. So think first, tweet later. So again, if you're having one of those aha moments, but it's a fairly negative one, that might not be the moment to tweet. Maybe you make a draft, maybe you send an email to yourself, maybe you call a friend. But you want to not just put whatever it is that's on your mind out there in Twitter, because even if you take it down, anyone could have screen captured it. It's out there forever. We'll get into this a little bit more when we talk about stepping carefully into the Twitterverse, but many of you may know the story of trainees who actually ended up being released from their training programs for putting out, racist, anti-Semitic, biased tweets out there. And years after they were taken down, they still resurface, and people lose their jobs and lose their training spots. So you don't want to have one of those moments that you'll regret later, because again, once it's out there and anyone can grab it. So always think first and tweet later. Tip 11, do not be afraid to brag or toot your own horn. I would advocate that those not be the only tweets you put out there. You really do want to celebrate others, amplify others, connect with others. And if you did something that you're really proud of, put that out there. It doesn't even have to be a humble brag. Just say, I'm really excited. I got to give a grand rounds at Mount Sinai Beth Israel today and connect with old colleagues. This was really fun, and it was an honor to do. So you can do that, and then have a little PR team where then you and your colleagues, you retweet each other. You say, yeah, that was great. I'm so proud of my friend who just did X, Y, or Z. So brag about yourselves, brag about your colleagues, amplify yourself, amplify your colleagues. And then tip 12, have fun with it and be clever. Some of, again, my most favorite med ed cartoons or quotes or things that I put into my talks, even when I talk about mitigating bias and letters of recommendations, I grab things from Twitter all the time, screenshots of people who put up a tweet of a letter of recommendation that they got that they're horrified by. And so there's so much fodder that can be grabbed from Twitter to help you do the work that you're doing, and that could also just be really fun. So some summary tips from that article on tweeting as a residency program. So reminder that Twitter creates opportunities for residency and training programs to disseminate educational content. Twitter creates unique opportunities for programs to really amplify and celebrate their trainees. Never miss an opportunity to say why your residents are amazing. Never miss an opportunity to say, I just worked with the best med student. Here's what they did. Take that selfie and put it out there in the world. Twitter affords programs opportunities to further engage local faculty. So again, if you have a junior faculty who just gave a talk or a noon conference, or even just did a little chalk talk with some residents, get a picture of it and put it out there and say why that faculty is awesome and a great teacher. Twitter creates new national and international learning and networking opportunities. Again, the more you put out there about the work that you're doing, that your colleagues are doing, that your residents and chiefs and faculty are doing, the more opportunities they have to get out there and bring even more attention to your program and your institution. And that maintaining a program Twitter account is very possible, and it really is rewarding. And so you, while it's great to have those who are in your program tweeting, having a formal Twitter account of your training program can actually have a lot of benefits, again, specifically around recruitment, but also around amplifying your trainees and making them feel like they're seen and that the work that they're doing day in and day out really matters. So I loved this one that you put out there, grabbed a great moment. So you've got a picture in there, you've got masks, so you're showing safety, you're showing advocacy, right? Happy National Women's Physicians Day. You're tagging people. We tag our chair, you tagged your institution, you tagged your Department of Medicine. So, there's a lot that was done really, really well in this one. I thought this was a great illustrative tweet that you put out there. Again, recommend the selfie stick. This was our Women in Medicine Day picture and tweet. And so there's always ways to just capture those moments and put them out there, for the rest of the world to see what your trainees are doing. So what else in the Twitterverse? So we're innovating, we're inspiring, we're excelling. And there's ways to do all of these, again, carefully out in the Twitterverse. I love this cartoon. I asked around and nobody heard anything. And so again, one, it was a great grab that I got from Twitter, but it also is sort of, if it's happening and you're not tweeting about it and you're not putting it out there, the people that are getting a lot of their information from social media might not know all of the incredible things going on in your program. And so again, if they're asking around and like, yeah, I haven't seen them on Twitter. Have you? No, I haven't seen them. It's kind of like these trees talking to themselves here. So these few slides were something that a colleague of mine put together for a talk that we're doing at a national meeting next month on promoting yourselves as educators and getting promoted. But I grabbed 3 of her slides because they specifically spoke to social media. And so huge shout out to Carla Spagnoletti. But I'm going to present to you a few of her slides that I think are pertinent to this. So in promoting yourself, social media can help give you a broader dissemination of your work and your platform, both nationally and internationally. And it also gives you easy ways to engage with your institution's social media and marketing team. And so you might not want to, be sending emails or even know who the people are in your own social media or marketing team in your institution, but you can tag them when you put things out on Twitter to say, hey, look at all the phenomenal things our residency is doing. Look at the great work of our chief residents, of our faculty. And then it gets then it can take on a life of its own in your department or your institution's marketing. Social media rules to live by. Your profile can significantly impact your ability to join or participate in different virtual communities and build your online network. And so think about what you're saying, what your handle is, if it's professional, if it makes sense. We had a resident whose Twitter handle for quite some time was like Dr. Fartis Face. And, people giggled and he giggled, but then it gets to a point where it's, do you want to continue that? And maybe you do, but you want it to be a deliberate decision if so. And so when you use a professional handle and you include your institutional affiliations, that's going to help you promote your department and your institution. But then, then there's the responsibility that goes with that as well. If you're doing it from that standpoint, you want to use a professional picture, and you certainly want to follow and connect with other experts in your field. Always important to know your institution's rules and HIPAA. Again, do not be tweeting anything about patients. Make sure that if there's computers in the background, there's no protected information on it. Make sure if you're tweeting a selfie of your ward team that you don't have a patient walking by or a nurse walking by that's holding information that could have any identifiable information on it. And then this rule of thirds. So a third of your updates should be about your content. So Carla grabbed this tweet that I put out. where I was excited to help one of our lead trainees, Dr. Torres Diaz, from Columbia, on an article on leadership that she put up there. And so you want to be able to promote the work that you're doing, even if you're more of a mentoring author, and promote your mentees. You know, it's such a treat to write a piece with this superstar, Lucille Torres Diaz, and promote the work that she's doing. Then a third should be completely sharing content from others and surfacing ideas. And so this MCG Office for Faculty Success, I love them. I retweet almost everything they say. They have put out such incredible material on mentorship, and how to look at the status of mentoring in your department, and what are some tips to mentor those from different backgrounds of you, and you know, basically everything they put out, I'm going to grab and I'm going to tweet and put it out there. And so you want to find people whose work you really appreciate and amplify them and put it out there, especially around times like National Mentoring Month, et cetera. And so again, this is an example of sharing content from others and surfacing their ideas. And then a third based on sort of personal interactions related to your work. And so this was an opportunity where a colleague and I both got to go give grand rounds together on the topic of mentorship. Of course, we've got all sorts of selfies here. Mentorship and sponsorship are key, doing your homework when you look for your mentors, and investing in relationships. And so put things out there about the colleagues that you're interacting with at the national meetings, who you are meeting, why is that important to you? It makes you approachable so that others can come up and say like, hey, I saw this tweet that you put out there. I'm really interested in mentorship too. Maybe we can do a workshop on that sometime together. And so a third on the work you're doing, a third on purely the work of others, and then a third around the relationships, the people, so that other people know if they want to engage or interact with you or not. And then just to show some national tweet ups. So again, one of these is at the Society for General Internal Medicine. Another is at the Alliance for Academic Internal Medicine, that these literally came together for Twitter and over Twitter of, hey, med ed Twitter peeps, who's going to be at this meeting? Let's have a tweet out. And you go and you talk and you say, gosh, I really loved what you shared on X, Y, or Z. And you meet people in real life who actually do the same academic work as you. They could be your mentors. They could be your next collaborator. They could be your next best friend. And so again, it's a really great way to connect with folks, you know, certainly in the Twitter community, but then they bring you to these real life connections through these tweet ups. Other things that you can do out in the Twitterverse to help your programs and to help you in your own careers. So here's someone in the OB-GYN literature saying, hey, come join our team. We're doing monthly journal club. Join us on here. Look at the academic work we're doing. This tweet on the right, I love this because in one screen grab, I could grab both one of my favorite authors, Simon Sinek, again, putting out sort of one of those like wisdom bombs that he always does. And then also AIM with their Hamilton reference here with Utebe and History Has Its Eyes on You, promoting race and justice in academic medicine. And so again, your eyes might have gone to Simon Sinek or to Utebe, but in one screen, you had both of these brilliant gentlemen in the work that they're doing. And again, it's such a great way to sort of see what's going on out there. Here's a tweet here with, you know, someone wanted to say, look what my kid is doing. We've got a future GYN influence here. I look like a surgeon, and showing, you know, some laparoscopic surgery here. Again, if you're following the SheMD or the Women in Medicine, or you're giving a talk about, you know, disparities in salary for women in medicine, here, you know, okay, so women in internal medicine make 80 cents on the dollar compared to men, and then links you to the articles and also to a community that's also interested in gender parity for women in medicine. And so again, when you're picking your areas of advocacy or the areas that are important to you, all of these tweets can lead you to the right direction and connect you to those communities. Here's one of a student putting herself out there and saying, hey, I'm an MS4. Here's what's important to me. If you're a residency program, take a look at me. And it's amazing now the people that say, you know what, I saw this young woman on Twitter. Let's pull her application and take a look. And then the reverse of that is you guys did a fantastic job here with the fellowship, saying, you know, last night we organized a fellowship match theme Q&A for interns and residents. You're sponsoring and highlighting one of your APDs, as well as 4 of our outstanding residents who just matched. And so this was a beautiful example of, look what we're doing and why we're awesome. We're sponsoring and highlighting our trainees. We're giving a shout out to people who did things that are great. And we're calling out future applicants to say, take a look at this great work that we're doing. Here's some other great tweets that your teams put out there. So, congrats to Dr. Manira Aslanova and Freddie Gonzalez, and look what they're doing in their cases at ACG in Vegas. This is awesome. And then, fellow extraordinaire commanding the room with a mock code. And you've got, one of your chiefs being the patient here. So again, you're promoting, we travel, our training program pays for our residents to go to Vegas. So all of the kind of subtle messages that are putting in there, gosh, I want to go to a residency program that sends me to Vegas. I want to go to a residency program where my chief will lie on a bed and let us run a mock code on them. And so you're really putting out a culture, an atmosphere, a training environment, a culture of community, of education, of collaboration. All of these things are sending messages with your pictures, with the words, with what you choose to put into these. Each and every word should be very deliberate and thoughtful. And then again, back to tutorials. So all of the ways that we can educate through Twitter. So people are going to put up x-rays, EKGs, pathology findings, labs, clinical cases, and talk about it. And then you can debate the diagnosis, or, gosh, I thought it was this. Why isn't it that? And again, when you're flattening that hierarchy, you can be taught by people that are completely different institutions. And you can tag them and bring them into that conversation. So maybe you want to say, I actually want to know what Dr. Steinberg thinks about this. So I'm gonna tag him in it and ask my questions about this EKG or this X-ray. So it's a beautiful place to actually deliver education as well, not just to talk about the education you've delivered somewhere else. So with the last few minutes before we get to questions, I want to again highlight some keys about treading carefully into the Twitterverse. So I hope I've given you a lot of examples about, in each of those buckets, how you can amplify, how you can entertain, how you can be inspired, how you can create and also benefit from scholarship, but also keeping in mind who else is out there and how to make sure that you're keeping yourself, your trainees, your institutions safe. So this is an email that I cut and pasted from one of our residency program admins that I just thought was very clever, that she sent out to the residents to make sure that they knew about their social media policy of the WashU's residency program. So she said, well, not sharing patient data or posting about cases on social media are pretty obvious. And if they weren't obvious, please read the attached policy very, very carefully. Please also be cognizant of any videos or pictures that you might take while at work that you might not intend to, but you could accidentally capture background things like patient data or your colleagues talking about patients. And while taking that awesome selfie about your amazing wellness lunch or recording that video of your friend breakdancing, you never know what you might be having in the background. And so Bethany said, well, at work, this is you on social media. Interestingly, Twitter is not one of these. And I asked her about that later, was that on purpose or was just you could only fit 4 in there? So it's not necessarily that you shouldn't be tweeting at work, but again, just to be tremendously cognizant of what's happening in the background, especially with any videos or photos, to ensure that you're not violating any policies or HIPAA. And then, an example of a social media guideline. And if you haven't seen yours at your own hospital, it probably behooves you to do so. So I can share with you some that we have at BJC, but it's really important to know your own. So being professional and respectful in all posting, you always want to be fair and courteous to your coworkers, your managers, other coworkers who work for your hospital system. If you do decide to post or display comments about people you work with, be careful about using statements or photographs or videos that could be viewed as malicious, vulgar, obscene, threatening, intimidating, or harassing, or that are going to disparage any of them. Because if it could constitute harassment or bullying, you're going to end up getting yourself into a lot of trouble, in addition to what other damage you cause for that person. So again, this is one of those think first, tweet later. Examples, offensive posts meant to intentionally harm someone's reputations, contribute to a hostile work environment. Again, anything on the basis of race, gender, disability, age, religion, or any protected status, you want to stay away from those. And recall, again, these are anything you put out there can be visible to patients, coworkers, managers, competitors, which is sort of interesting as well. So you don't want to put out your trade secrets or your bank accounts or those sorts of things. And the biggest piece I pull from this is remember that everything you do on the online environment is visible to all of these other groups. And so be very cognizant of what you're putting out there and who else you want it seen by. So if you're representing our hospital, again, they're asking that you disclose your association and your role. Others might say, I'm actually going to come right out and say, I do not represent or speak for my hospital. That's what most of us are going to do, because most of us are not actually representing our hospital. We may be a representation of them, but we're certainly not the formal media trained person who speaks for our institutions. So when you're expressing your personal views, which is much more likely of what those of us are doing on Twitter and social media, you want to make sure that if your association with your institution is apparent, that your opinions are personal and do not represent the position of the hospital that you work for. So obviously, all of us and all employees of anywhere we work have the right to our personal opinions. But if our personal blogs or views or comments are inconsistent with or would negatively impact where we work, we should really think about whether we want to say who we are or where we work. And again, we want to make it clear that we're not representing our institution. So in just one screenshot of some of my followers, I just grabbed the screenshot to show you some of the ways that people say this. So one of my former residents says, tweets my own. For those of you who know Dr. Darylyn Moyer, she's a former medicine PD, is now the CEO and executive vice president of ACP. She says, opinions are my own, retweets are not endorsements. Stephanie Brown, phenomenal colleague from Miami, residency director there. She says, where my MBA is from, but my tweets are my own. The chair of OB-GYN at University of Kentucky, one of my Elam sisters, says tweets mine. And one of my close friends from med school, actually signed our Katuba, says all tweets are my own. So there's a lot of ways that you can do it in different ways, but somewhere in there, and again, this is not going to, if you say tweets are my own, but you still then say something completely disparaging about your boss, that probably is still not going to protect you. But most people who are out there in the Twitterverse professionally are going to have something in there in their little bio or handle that says that the tweets that you're saying are representing just yourself. So common pitfalls in social media, again, inappropriate or unprofessional photos. Just, be careful what you're putting out there. We had a former chief of staff that I worked with, and I got invited to go to a basketball game with a Cavs game in Cleveland with a small group of us with our chief of staff. It was a great kind of mentoring sponsorship opportunity. He bought everyone a beer. As soon as I took my phone up to get the selfie of us, right? Because the selfie's coming, literally, my hand goes up with the selfie. It was as if it was like automatic chain reaction. His beer immediately went down and he said, I will never be photographed with alcohol in my hand. And it was a really interesting moment because, we're at a basketball game. He bought us the beer. We're all over 21, most of us more, at least twice that. But that was something that he, had decided that if anything is going to be of, him in any sort of media, he does not want to have alcohol in his hands. And so things to just think twice about, even if it's not necessarily an unprofessional photo, but how do you want to be presented, out there in the professional space? Again, watch out for charged comments. Certainly anything discriminatory, overly political, you're going to want to stay away from. Being a social media ghost is also a pitfall. So if you put yourself out there, but you're not really interacting, you're not promoting others, you're not amplifying, you're not doing much, you're sort of just being a ghost, you're not going to have followers and you're not going to have people to interact with, so that when you do have something really interesting to say, you're not going to have anyone that sees it. And so kind of cultivating that community and cultivating the followers so that you can get your message out there and you can amplify the people that are important to you and get your trainees and their successes out there. You want to have an audience that receives those messages. And so you don't want to be a social media ghost. Poor community management. So again, you want to go in with respect and manners. And then obviously just watch your typos or grammar. It is actually really painful that you cannot edit a tweet once it's out there. So a lot of people will just reply or sometimes just take it down and fix it. We are human. But in general, you don't want the reputation for someone that puts out a lot of poor grammar or typos. Also, it can also just dilute the message if it's not clear. Another, again, talking about scholarship coming from social media. This is a great piece that Jasmine Marcelin put out from Nebraska about the 5 A's of mission-based tweeting. So authenticity, how, again, you want to really use your own voice. You don't want to try to be anyone else except for you, but you want to be your best version of yourself. Next A, amplify other voices. Again, this is such a great opportunity to amplify your mentees, your trainees, your program, to engage with others who have similar missions, share that work, give feedback, be open to collaborating, and really call out the work of others and get their message out there. And then when you have a message that's really important to share, or you want to tweet about why you have an awesome chief resident, you want people who are going to do the same and amplify and say, yeah, you're right. That Mount Sinai Beth Israel chief resident is the bomb. And, again, you want to amplify others, and they're going to amplify the people that you want to as well. Accelerate your work by being consistent with what you're putting out there. Your followers do want to hear from you. And the more you keep them engaged, the more followers you'll have. So that when you do mission-based tweeting, or you do want to promote your program, again, you have people that are going to get that message. Avoid arguments. Twitter is a fun place to debate. And sometimes my opinions can be very formed by reading all different sides and all different perspectives. But you don't want to get in fights. And you don't want to engage in any sort of name calling or anything that's going to look unprofessional. If it's starting to move from debate to argument, I would just move out from it. And then along those same lines, always be professional. You're representing yourself, which is the most important, but you're also representing your organization, your practice, the field of medicine itself, your own reputation and credibility. And again, you're promoting your trainees and your mentees and your associate directors and the people that you want to be successful. And so if we act unprofessionally, then others could be guilty by association. So you want to be the best version of yourself. So people are eager to interact with those that you're putting out there as well. This one, I hope it speaks for itself. Do not tweet angry. This will be the best tweet you will ever regret. Zero benefit can come from it. It's okay to be angry, feel the feelings. We all go through anger. It's one of the critical steps, sometimes to even getting to acceptance. But when you are angry, call a friend, call a parent, journal if you need to. There's a lot of ways to manage anger and frustration, all in very healthy ways. Twitter is not one of them. And so slamming someone or putting something out there that you cannot take back, even if you feel great in that millisecond, it will come back and bite you. And so I hope there's a lot of pearls that you'll take from today, but if nothing else, do not tweet angry. Remember this angry bird and do not become him. And then just to end on some tips that I thought Charlie Ray put out really nicely in an article on from Journal of Hospital Medicine on sort of ways to engage in social media. And they actually did it from the perspective of the journal. So they said, how does the Journal of Hospital Medicine engage in social media? But I thought that there were some key points that were really pertinent to anyone, and especially tweeting as a training program or as a medical professional. So number one, just knowing your goals. So is your goal to disseminate research? Is it to build colleagues? Is it to amplify your trainees? Is it to promote a cause like women in medicine or Black Lives Matter or gun safety or violence? Whatever it is, have a clear goal, because then your people are going to know what they're getting from you. And that as you're deciding if you're going to tweet something or not, you really can make that decision. Is this consistent with the goal? Is this going to get me to the outcome that I want? Know your audience. And so again, have a sense of who is following you. Is it other trainees? Is it other programs? Is it the competition? Is it your colleagues and friends? And so that you're engaging people in a way that's meaningful to them. Build your team. And so this is, if you choose to tweet as a residency program or even as an institution or as a chief team, having more than one person can diversify the ideas, what's getting out there. It can become less onerous. And so sometimes having a small Twitter team can help, have the impact be even greater. Stay engaged. Again, if you sort of join and then you ghost, you're not going to then have people to hear the message when you have something worth sharing. And then own your mistakes. Inevitably, we all have an oops. We all have a lapse. We might say something that lands as offensive, even if we didn't intend it that way. It's a chance to learn, to call people in, not call them out, to apologize, to say, thank you so much. I didn't know that was a word that landed on, you or those from a population in this way. I won't use it again. Now I know. So if you do make a mistake, you may want to take the tweet down, but it's also okay to own your mistake, or even just say, I've seen, again, Grady Doc do this a lot of, I made a mistake today. I didn't connect with a learner in the way that I wished I had, or I wasn't an ally the way I hoped to be, or owning mistakes we have with patients. And so again, when we're vulnerable, again, I think we can gain trust, and we can gain people who then want to hear the messages that we send. So I hope now that you can describe the benefits of engaging in MedTwitter, amplify your programs and faculty, outline steps to stay out of trouble. If you can, and if you're interested, I hope you'll consider engaging with me on Twitter. I would love to have more friends and to amplify the great work that you're doing at your program. You can set your messages up if you really want to get advanced to who can contact you how. And then I want to encourage each of you to enhance your network by following 3 leaders in your field today, to go on and find 3 people you find interesting and follow them, to commit to liking at least 3 tweets this week that speak to you. Bonus points if you actually retweet or comment, and then super gutter bonus points if you actually construct a tweet, whether it's a picture, a quote, a reflection, an article, something that you're thinking about related to your field or your passions, or something that you want to celebrate. So those are your assignments and homework. And with that, I'm happy to take any questions, and I thank you so much for the opportunity to speak to you today.
Thank you so much, Dr. Spencer. So many amazing pearls. I think all of us will be rewatching this lecture for all the amazing advice, and I will absolutely be learning from it, as I already did in the past 60 minutes. I know it's 1:01, so we're a little over time, but if there's any last minute questions or urgent questions for Dr. Spencer, please ask them now. Sure, Matsuo. Yes, I think it's just going to be Matsuo, Dr. Self.
Sorry.
This is going to be our future chief, Dr. Spencer, so he's learning a lot.
Hey, congratulations.
Hi, this is Matsuo. I'm a current PGY1 resident.
PGY3.
PGY3, sorry, why I don't know why I said that. And I'm going to be a chief next year. And I think my mind is like more fresh to be a chief. So maybe that's why I said PGY1. But anyway, so I started to be a heavy user of Twitter since PGY2. And initially, I think I used Twitter as the source of like educational material. And then there are a lot of fancy infographics that was beautifully summarized by a lot of smart doctors there. And then just because I'm going to be a chief, I started to collect all these infographics as an educational materials for me to use maybe in the future as a chief. But I mean, there was a question, how valid these materials are as an educational material, as a source, in addition to our traditional, like a teaching with like journals, articles, bring some paper, share the PDFs. And then I have a question: do you use some of these infographics in your teaching service, or do you have any like particular advice, opinions about, about using these materials as source of teaching?
So great question. If I understand correctly, it's sort of how do we know the credentials or the accuracy of sort of some of the educational infographics that are out there, and do I use them? And so I would say absolutely. I think there's great educational graphics or things that I pull from Twitter all the time, and I usually preface it with, I got this from Twitter, so it must be true. And so I think you can bring a little bit of humor to it. If it's, I don't know that I would base a medical decision making based on it. So if it's something like, I thought I really like this as a great way to interpret a blood smear. What do you think of this algorithm? How does it align, or how is it different from other things that we look at? And so, sometimes the credibility of the person who's doing it. So there's an Emory team that puts out kind of, I think they call themselves the MedEd swag team. They put out great educational infographics that I grab all the time that I think are terrific. You may check some in the beginning and then realize this is a reliable source. So I think just using your judgment, I wouldn't only teach from things that you grab from Twitter, but I think just owning it and saying, I grabbed this from Twitter, so it must be true. Like, what do we think? Here's what I really liked about it. And then you can kind of discuss whether, the evidence supports what's there or not.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you so much, Matsuo. It's 1:04, so I recognize we're over time, but thank you so much, Dr. Spencer. If there's any other questions for Dr. Spencer, you can forward them to me, and I'm sure Dr. Spencer will be happy to answer them for us. Thank you again, everyone, for joining us, and thank you, of course, Dr. Spencer, for your amazing talk.
Thanks so much. Take care, everyone. Good luck today for all the students. Bye-bye.
Bye, everyone.